everyone. Thank you all for joining us to the 2024 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. Today we're going to have the Competitive Advantage Talks presented by the Craft Analytics Group. I hope you all are having a great day at the conference. My name is Moody Sala, and I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan. It is my pleasure to introduce Matt Thomas, aka Matador, Chessboxing World Champion, founder of A Brawl for a Cause, Fight and Flow, and the United Chessboxing. Please come to the stage.
Thanks, man. All right, can you hear me okay? I'm going to start this out with a show of hands, okay? If you have ever played a game of chess, raise your hand. Look at that, my people. All right, keep your hands up. Oh, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. Keep your hands up if you've ever been punched in the face. Nice, okay, all right, we got some stories in here. We'll get to those later. Last one, keep your hands up if you've had both happen within a minute of each other. I lost everyone. Okay, no chess boxers in here, but that's okay, not yet. My name is Matt Thomas. I'm a Chessboxing World Champion, and I am obsessed with winning the fight for peak performance. Now, I found my battlefield in the world of chess boxing, but these lessons apply to every arena of life. They can apply to your fitness, they can apply to your career, and to your personal relationships. I'm going to get into this. Is this my thing? Can I change this? Okay. Yeah, if someone could bring the slide clicker to me, that'd be great. Is someone else controlling that, though? So I just say next slide? Okay. All right, you might recognize this guy. Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until they've been punched in the face. Not having a slide kicker feels like being punched in the face right now. But we're going to work through it. Now, there's no arena where that's more true than the world of chess boxing. Next slide. Just for context about the talk today, I'm going to share a moment from my combat sports career. And it was the most significant moment in my chess boxing journey. It was the second round of the Chessboxing World Championship in Calcutta, India. We had just finished the first chess round. If you don't know chess boxing, it is alternating rounds between chess and boxing until checkmate or knockout. So you never do both at the same time. I don't take a piece and then uppercut you. They wait 3 minutes, then they ring a bell, pause the game, remove the board, then you have a minute to put on gloves and box. So here we are in the second round, the bell just rung, and I have a slight advantage on the board. I'm not winning, but that's kind of where my advantage was. And my opponent had 10 years more boxing experience than I did. So in my mind, I need to survive this round against a better boxer and get back to the board where my advantage is. That plan didn't go quite according to plan because my very first punch is pictured here. I throw a jab, he slips outside of it, he throws a nice southpaw cross, catches me on the chin, and it stumbles me. And I still have 2 minutes and 50 seconds to survive. Now, I had practiced cardio, I had practiced footwork, I had practiced defense because my advantage was on the chess side. So I stay alive as long as I can in the round, and we're about 15 minutes before the end of the second round, and I see an opening. And I decide, okay, boxing might not be my advantage in this match, but I'm going to take a shot. Threw a right hook, caught him right on the temple. I see his eyes kind of flicker, and I hear the bell ring. He starts stumbling off to his corner. And the bell ringing is my Pavlov dog trigger, my moment where my training kicks in. As soon as I hear that bell, I start to slow down my breath. I make my way to my corner, and my corner man starts removing my glove. As soon as he starts removing my gloves, I close my eyes, I picture the board, I think about my candidate moves, and I start to change the temporal spatial part of my brain from boxing over to chess. Next slide. When the bell rang again to begin the chess round, I was seated in my chair, chest open, shoulders back, getting a lot of oxygen in through my nose and slowing my breath down on the exhale. My opponent was hunched over, shoulders forward, chest concave, and he was slow coming back to the ring. The very first move that my opponent made changed my life. He picked up a white rook and moved it down the board, then hit his timer. The problem for him was that I was playing the game with the white pieces. He picked up my rook and moved it down the board. That told me my opponent doesn't know what color pieces he is. He doesn't know where he is. This is my shot. This is my opportunity to win a world championship for my country. I got to go now. So every move was an attack. As soon as it was my turn, I was moving. I was putting time pressure back on my opponent, and I was giving him opportunities to make more mistakes. And more mistakes he made. Because 30 seconds before the end of the third round, I found a checkmate combination to finish my opponent. Next slide. So in 2018, no American had ever competed in the World Championship yet. I was the first one, and when I signed up, I thought I was being a scapegoat. I thought I was going to go be a sacrificial lamb all the way across the world, had never been to Asia, but I was going to be the first American to do it, and that'd be a cool life story. But I was way underrated for boxing and for chess, and I was fighting the best people in the world at this. But what I focused on in 2018 that our community was not yet practicing is called state change management. That minute in between rounds is where the real battle in chess boxing happens. And when we study our lives, we can also see a lot of parallels in little time in between big moments, making those moments even bigger. Next slide. So what is happening in the brain when we chess box? Well, we're switching between two opposite parts of our brain. When we fight, we're using one of the first parts of our brain to develop, called the amygdala. This is our center for fear response. So when we feel a threat, we respond with either fight, flight, or freeze. Probably heard that before. Now, this part of our brain really sucks at playing chess. It is totally present state. It is thinking about here and now and only action. The part of the brain that we want to use when we play chess is called the prefrontal cortex. That is our home for executive function. It makes really good decisions. It's our center for pattern recognition, strategic thought, and visualization. It thinks about not just action, but reaction. So in order to switch between these two parts of our brain, it's not as easy as flipping a switch. Our brain will also often stay where it feels it's most necessary to stay. So at the beginning of a chess round, you might still be playing with your amygdala, which is the caveman part of your brain. You don't want a caveman playing a king's game. And in the same respect, you don't want the analysis part of your brain boxing. Then you're in analysis paralysis. It's a really good way to get knocked out. So how do we improve our state change management and that time in between rounds? Next slide. We practice what's called cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility was a term I first heard on the Huberman Labs podcast. And when I heard Dr. Huberman say cognitive flexibility in the context of chess boxing, I felt just this flood of emotion. Something that I had been practicing for years, probably finally had scientific terms around it. Plus, he said the words chess boxing, which on a big podcast, that's pretty cool for our little sport. So, as you can see, task switching is required in chess boxing, and task switching is what helps improve cognitive flexibility. And being good at cognitive flexibility helps you task switch more efficiently and effectively. So that minute in between rounds, the way that I use it in chess boxing is I do what's considered an upper breath to psych up my central nervous system before I go out and box. That gives me a slight advantage over my opponent because I'm already in a fight or flight state when I start a boxing round, whereas they may just start to transition after I land my first punch. And if you've ever boxed before, if you've ever played chess before, you know that momentum plays a huge role in both expressions. If you make a blunder early in a game, usually blunders happen in bundles. It can be a domino effect of momentum working against you, and you have to work against yourself to overcome whatever mistake you made and whatever effect that had on your mentality. Same with boxing. Just like in that second round of the World Championship Finals, I got caught early. It took a lot to be able to muster whatever kind of fortitude I had to survive the rest of the round because I was already staggered. He already had timed one of my punches. I lose confidence that way, and it's hard to come back from. Next slide. So let's apply this minute in between rounds to our everyday life, okay? When we do any sort of task at work, it usually includes both our right and our left brain. Right brain generally is the more creative side of your brain. Left brain is more of the logical, analyzing part of your brain. So when we're in a mind wandering, or what this says is a spontaneous cognition state, that's when, like, if we're on a chessboard, we're studying the board, we're counting material, and we're seeing what type of ideas are there, right? Is this an equal position? Are there any threats? Are there any opportunities? Once we find an idea, then we start to shift from our right brain to our left brain as we start to evaluate that idea. Is this a good idea? Is this a good candidate move? What could he do in response to this move? So as we shift from right brain to left brain, we start to drill a little bit deeper, and our body gets more tense. So mind wandering, la-di-da, we're thinking, oh, an idea pops into our head. Now we start to study that idea. Shoulders rise, abdominals contract, heart rate rises, and we're drilling deeper. So enough theory. I really wanted to give you guys something that you could take away out of this room to the rest of your life. So we're actually going to practice what I do in between chess boxing rounds to psych up or to calm down the central nervous system so that you can apply it to your own lives. So next slide. You might recognize this guy. Anyone here Wim Hof? Okay, we got some Wim Hof fans. I hate to break it to you, but Wim Hof completely ripped off his breath from yoga. Yogic practitioners of pranayama have been doing Kapalabhati for literally thousands of years. And Wim Hof adapted it from yoga and applied it to enduring very cold temperatures and holding his breath for a long time. What we're going to do today is a beginner exercise designed to work your way up to a more intense version of Kapalabhati or fire breath. So if you could join me, sit up nice and tall in your seat. Move your shoulders back. Relax them down and away from your ears. And we're going to take one baseline breath. So inhale through your nose all the way up to full lung capacity. Hold your breath at the top. Sip in a little extra air. And then exhale. As you exhale, try to relax every muscle in your body. Anywhere you're feeling tension, try to release that tension with the exhale and all the air going out. So that is your current spectrum of breath. And we're going to use that spectrum to do hyperventilations in rapid cyclical succession. What I mean by that is we're going to inhale to 50%. Go ahead and do that. We're going to do a forced exhale like this 5 times in a row. Okay, so stay at that 50%. We're going to do 5. Ready? Big inhale. Big exhale. Back up to 50%. We're going to do that 2 more times. Ready? 5 breaths. Big inhale. Big exhale. Halfway up. 5 more. Big inhale. Big exhale. Return to a normal pattern of breathing and scan your body. Some sensations you might be feeling is a little bit of a head rush, maybe some tingles in your fingers. You might be a little bit more focused, a little bit more present. All these things are normal. In between a chess and a boxing round, I do 108 of these breaths in 1 minute. So it's 3 rounds of 36 breaths. And this exercise, this beginner 3 rounds of 5, was popularized by Gary Brecka on his Ultimate Human podcast, which I totally recommend. But if you start with 3 by 5 today, which you just did, you already got day 1, check. Day 2, do 6 breaths. Day 3, do 7. And after 4 weeks, you'll have built a habit of starting to expand your lungs, how strong they are, and starting to energize yourself, get oxygen in your bloodstream, and start to get really used to being in this upper state. Next slide. Now that we're a little bit up, we're going to come a little bit back down, come back into our headspace. This is the breath that I do after a boxing round, before a chess round. This is what happened as soon as that bell rung in that second round. I started to do this style of breathing, Samavriti, or what the special forces use, a version of it called box breathing. Now, like special forces, they have to make very important decisions under extreme stress. Okay, it's even more intense than chess boxing. It's literally life and death. We're going to do a beginner version of this that's really simple to practice. You don't have to do intense breath counts. All you have to do is exhale longer than you inhale. So for the rest of my talk today, all I want you to do is take sharp inhales and then try to make your exhale last as long as you can. Okay? So you can start with a 4-second inhale, 5-second exhale. 4-second inhale, 8-second exhale. 4-second inhale, 12-second exhale. The longer you can get, the more you're going to feel the effects of calming your central nervous system, lowering your heart rate, dumping adrenaline, and being able to engage the parts of your brain that are better at thinking. Cool? Next slide. Okay, so this talk is titled Winning the Fight for Peak Performance. FIGHT is an acronym, and we're going to go through each of these letters along with the 5 Ps of peak performance. Now, this is through the lens of chess boxing, so I'm going to use some chess boxing references, but try to think about your own life and how this applies. First, we perform best when we're in a flow state, when we're fully present and we're enjoying the benefit of all of our hundreds or thousands of repetitions prior to that moment, just happening through our subconscious. It's a very present state. And it can be difficult to attain. Sometimes it just happens to us, which is beautiful, but it takes practice to be able to enter this flow state consistently and to do it efficiently. In order to do that practice, we need to figure out how to start it. Next slide. And that's I, ignite. If you're going to start a fire, first you have to light it. And in order to do that, we need to prime. So whatever activity is coming next, if I have chess coming next, I'm doing that priming breath, exhaling longer than I inhale, calming my central nervous system, getting ready for that next activity. Same vice versa. In order to ignite or prime, we need to know what we're priming for. Next slide. And that's G. So what's our goal? We can take this Chessboxing World Championship finals as an example. I knew my advantage was on the board. So I wasn't coming out trying to knock out my opponent. I was coming out trying to survive to make it back to the board. Think about it in the inverse. If I'm losing on the board, I only have one win condition. I have to come out and knock out my opponent. Depending on what the goal is, what our priority is, we prime differently. We think about it, we prepare differently. Next slide. So next is harmony. Now, when we think about fighting, you usually don't think about peace, but what I'm talking about is not a fight against anyone else. I'm talking about the fight within yourself. So let's say you're in some sort of competition. Would you rather just fight against your opponent, or would you want to fight against your opponent and yourself? It's like you're just adding someone else to your opponent's team when you aren't fully aligned and in balance with yourself. So this is the example here is if I'm trying to play chess with my amygdala, I'm trapped in a cage with my caveman brain. I might be a 1700 level ELO chess player, but I'm making mistakes that are 8th grade level because I'm not using the part of my brain that's good at chess when I practice. Next slide. T is triumph. It's the last part of fighting for peak performance. And I'm not talking about triumph, the outcome. I'm not talking about raising the Stanley Cup trophy or winning a fight. What I'm talking about is the feeling of triumph that you experience when you're performing at your peak level, when you realize your potential. So it's an intentionality thing, it's not an outcome thing. And that's what brings this all together, is you don't get a triumph mindset, you don't get that feeling of peak performance unless you practice it, unless you get thousands of repetitions. The first time that I did this breath work was not in the World Championship finals. Every time I trained, if I was sparring, I was doing Kapalabhati. Every time I study chess, every time I play chess, I'm doing slow pattern breathing. I get the benefit of those thousands of repetitions when I step into the ring. And if I did more than my opponent, I have a slight advantage, and every advantage counts. Next slide. I skimmed the surface of all these. I went through that acronym pretty fast. If you want to go deeper on any of these, if you see applications, if you have more questions, we only have 5 minutes at the end of this, just scan that. You'll get my personal information, ask any questions, I'll respond to you personally, and you can also get the first chapter of an ebook on chess boxing called Chessboxing Basics. I'll send it to you. You can scan that, it'll come up again at the end while there's questions, so don't feel like you have to do it right now. Next slide. Okay, you may not recognize this person. In 2003, Ipe Rumbing, who's pictured, hosted the first ever chess boxing match in Berlin. One of his dreams for the sport was to one day be in the Olympics. He wanted to create an Olympic caliber sport between two of his favorite expressions, brain and brawn. This yin and yang that he fell in love with and that our whole community has followed suit and fallen in love with. In May 2020, Ipe passed away during the pandemic, before this dream could come true. Next slide. So this has not been announced publicly yet. This is the forum we chose to release this information. But on July 23rd, in Paris, during the Summer Olympics, we will be hosting one chess boxing match for IOC leadership and 2,000 Olympic athletes in Les Olympias, one of the most iconic venues in Paris. The IOC gave us this contract because the art that inspired Ipe to create chess boxing was done by a French artist. And every year, the Olympics host cultural and artistic performances as part of their programming leading up to the Olympics, usually from the home country. So even though we're miles away from qualifying to be an Olympic sport, you need a certain number of countries participating. You need youth programs. You need local, regional, national competitions. We're so far away from that. But in July, we get one fight between two undefeated fighters in our community, Ali and Frazier. Both over 2,400 ELO, both undefeated, never fought before, and they've been preparing to fight each other for a year. We get to show the world, we get to show the best athletes on the planet, and we get to show the people that will eventually make the decision on what sports will be added to the Olympics, our little sport. If you want to be a part of this journey, if you want to be a Team USA chess boxer, Canty in the front row. If you want to be a fan, if you want to be a partner, a sponsor, if you want to help with the process of getting the sport sanctioned in your state, in the United States, so we can host events, this is your call to action. This is the first step to the World Championship hosted this year by Russia, where we'll be building a Team USA and following our journey, Rocky IV style, Miracle on Ice style, to go take on the Russians and the rest of the world in December. If any of this excites you, if it creates any questions, next slide. There's the QR code. Scan it, reach out. I'd love to talk to you. And that's my time. I can take questions.
Hi, thank you so much for your time. My name is Gael Romain. I am working with the NBA. I am also an NLP practitioner, so I have a lot of questions and feelings about this, specifically towards the athlete part. And it's incredible that you are an athlete who has actually lived and breathed and felt this change. I struggle a little bit on the NBA side with coaches, players, even our referees in terms of understanding the concept of state change and peak performance in general. How do you see, of course, I think your time in India, like the global perspective of mental performance is a little bit different than the American perspective in the practical application. Do you have any advice for athletes, specifically, in America, in terms of getting across the bridge of understanding these concepts and actually applying them into their own practices?
Yeah, good question. Thanks. Start. The worst thing you can do is nothing. So when I started doing this, I noticed that I was worse at both when I tried to do them together. And so I started thinking about ways, because when I was practicing for chess boxing, no one was doing it in my country yet. So I had to find ways to practice with people that were good at each, and then transition between those two, and figure out how to use the most of my potential in each arena. And yoga just happened to be sitting there staring at me in the face, and I've already felt the positive benefits of yoga prior to doing this. I'm a certified yoga teacher. So it was a natural extension for me, already having that experience to apply it to this new kind of arena. But if you're in another sport, it doesn't have to follow the same fact pattern. If you have a perfect example is like a walkout song or a priming song, something that gets you hyped up right before you go perform. Something as simple as a 3-minute song right before you walk out to do your thing. It signals to your brain that's like, hey, when I hear this song, I perform, I win. It can be a song, it can be breath work. As long as it's something that you do and you tie it to whatever activity comes next, you're starting to engage that priming muscle, and you're starting to practice state change management and improve your cognitive flexibility. That help?
With that, I believe we are all out of time. If you have any more additional questions, please feel free to scan that code or see the team throughout the conference. Thank you all for attending.